Well, first of all, of course, thanks for inviting me. But so the scientists have done their work. The basin, particularly the Orange Basin, has been de-risked. So you'll still have some exploration and outstep drilling and semi-exploration, but you're going to go into the production phase, which of course is what we're considering now. So first oil is literally over the horizon, and of course, literally most of the big plays are indeed over the horizon. So you're going, the mindset now has to change from the exploration to the development phase. So I think it would be a prudent time to review some of the policy decisions, maybe some of the laws and regulations of the country, and also to start putting in place a number of initiatives and activities that, of course, will facilitate the development phase. So I think it starts with simply a review of your policies as a country and what your objectives are for the revenue, for the activities that are to come. I know that we're going to be a little more specific in some of the other parts of it, but I think overall it is that you're going to go through a change in mindset about what you have. There's a huge resource. Namibia certainly is increasingly on the international stage because of the size and the richness of the resource and the players who are involved, the major IOCs. So you're also going to have to recognize that Namibia's name is going to be that much more in the international sphere of things. But I guess we could go into some more specifics. Sure. I have been coming to Namibia for several years. My interaction with Namibia began with a conversation I had with the then Minister of Trade, late Dr. Gaingob. He and I sat down in Washington, D.C. for about 1 hour, a little more than an hour, and we had a very, very long conversation. And one of his best friends is from my country, Trinidad and Tobago, and that person facilitated the meeting between us. And Dr. Gaingob said, if you want to do business in my country, you must spend money in the hotels of my country. He's a typical Minister of Trade, and it was very humorous. But I took the point. If you want to do business in Namibia, get on a plane and get to Namibia. So I did that. And over time, I've been interacting with government officials. I, at one time, set up a consultancy with a local person. We've kind of put it on hold now, but the idea was always to find ways to contribute and to share some of the learnings, the successes, and the failures from my time in government, but also I've also been a consultant for quite a while now. And I've lived and worked in a number of other jurisdictions on the African continent and elsewhere. So that, we've picked up quite a lot of learnings, which we've been sharing over the years. I've been working, as I said, closely with officials in the ministry. Certainly I'm involved here with the Africa Energy Chamber, which is also heavily involved in advising and helping in Namibia. So that, I think that's the general context of my relationship. I've made quite a number of good friends. I've learned the roads of Namibia. I've learned how to get down to the coast and so on. So it's a very beautiful country. And then also as a geoscientist, and I admire the geology. Scientists, we like to look at rocks. And I admire the beauty of the country. Okay, so first you have to define what is and what is not local content. And certainly, and quite rightly, as you pointed out, you're going through a phase, it's evolving. So one's approach and understanding also must evolve as you go along. So typically, in the exploration phase, there's not necessarily a lot of interaction, and especially as the operations, most of the oil and gas exploration operations, save one, which I think is in the north of the country, is offshore and very far offshore. So that would have been seismic surveys and then drill rigs coming in to drill out there. Now that you're going into production, you're going to have the ability to support those operations. And that brings you to a whole other order of activities. So typically, people think that local content is about jobs. Local content is not directly really about jobs. Local content, the objective of local content is to provide and to develop value for the country from the extraction of the natural resource. And if you look at it in the broader context, it then evolves into, as I said, into a number of other activities. The other thing that one must consider, the profile. I mean, people talk about the Dutch disease. The profile, if I circle back around, the profile of countries that are considered low income, middle income, and high income by the World Bank. If you look at their economic profiles, the distinguishing feature from low income to high income has to do with the contribution of three primary sectors to the economy: manufacturing, services, and agriculture. And typically, low-income countries have a high contribution to their economies from the agricultural sector, and quite often subsistence agriculture. Whereas on the other end, high-income countries, the largest contribution is from services. So one has to consider that what are the activities that you want to create going forward to provide services to the industry that is about to gush, if I want to use that term, because of the size of the resource and over your country. What are those services that you can develop that will support the activity, that will provide the spin-off benefits to the country, which will include jobs, yes, but certainly significant contributors to your economy? Several come to mind. Since all of these activities are marine activities and they're over the horizon, you need to be able to support the vessels, and all of that activity offshore. I think people already recognize that you're going to need to expand some kind of port that supports those activities. You're going to need, and all the ancillary things that go with it. Ship repair, tugs, catering, and all of those kinds of activities. But because the coast is remote from your major metropoles, certainly you're going to have to develop infrastructure, and therein provides an opportunity for economic development. In addition to which, in terms of services, you have to really look carefully at your contracts, because there are areas where services could be provided, which I've observed in some of the other jurisdictions that I've worked in, including Trinidad and Tobago, and certainly some of the other countries, that somehow get excluded at the contract phase, and which later on you realize is a major leakage in terms of potential value. In many contracts that I've observed, the contract would stipulate that the provision of a service or a good should not be more than 10% of the value of the same value for the same item if it was obtained from an international source. Well, if your cost of finance and all of that is greater than that, there's almost no way that you're going to be able to compete. It's not a level playing field. with another provider who may have been a long-term customer of the supplier of the product and also part of the value chain of the entity. So clearly you have to look at that type of clause in your contract to figure out how do we negotiate to be able to create value. Another area that we've observed has to do with something as simple, or people think as simple, as insurance. Again, I have seen in other contracts, in other jurisdictions, where a law is written or a contract is negotiated that explicitly states that local insurance companies are not able to insure high-value capital items that are associated with the activity, the rigs and so on, but that they can insure vehicles, buildings, and the like. It turns out that, and as insurance experts and practitioners have schooled me, insurance works by having behind the insurance company something known as the reinsurance company. And it is the reinsurance company, in the event of a loss, that steps in, works with the insurance company to cover the loss. Since on the African continent, the risks are considered to be high, local insurance companies tend to find some of the highest grade reinsurance companies internationally to support them. And I've seen this happen. On the other hand, many of the IOC companies tend to self-insure or have their own other insurance arrangements in other places. So I think in local insurances, when they start to advocate for their services, they run into this sort of glass ceiling. And unfortunately, as I've seen in other places, this has been codified in law. So they're unable to then get those services. Now think about it. If a local insurance company is able to get into these large types of contracts, of course, certainly they become more profitable. But because they're a local company, they're then able to invest some of that into the local economy. So think of it. If you're going to build a shore base, and you have to move people there, you have to have houses, you have to have offices, hospitals, and all of the things that go with making that a useful activity to service the activities offshore. Then it is quite not possible that the same insurance companies, among other things, could be investors in that activity, which of course will lead to jobs, because you have to build all those things. You have investment that could be put into the local economy. So there are a number of areas like this that one has to look very carefully. But typically as well, in terms of services, a company coming in to do an investment will have done a survey and inevitably will determine that many of the services they require don't exist. Well, the reason they don't exist is because the activity never existed before. So again, one has to start planning to get either partnerships or people trained up or invested in developing some of those services. Now, obviously, some would be highly technical services that you may or may not be able to do local. And there are international service companies that follow all of these activities. And they will tend to hire locals as engineers and such. But again, there is the whole other subset of things that do exist that one should ensure don't get excluded from being a part of it. As I said, insurance and so on, so that you can have areas that are mutually beneficial to all concerned. Local content is not, like I say, it's not just jobs.
Yes.
The objective is to bring maximum values above and beyond the economic rents of royalty and profit share from the activity to develop the country from which the natural resource is being extracted.